Okay, we're back. Sorry, this is my first time uploading on YouTube, so you gotta bear with me with regards to putting this thing together. So anyway, without further ado, I just wanted to pick up from where I left off. This is part two of the Red Indian myth. I know some people are gonna take offense to this. I'm sorry. It's not to be offensive, but this basically enlighten people. Um, it's something that needs to really be addressed because I feel that what has happened here, and especially within retrospect of our history to the current date, it has allowed some people um, to literally claim indigenous ideals, philosophies, and values. Our people, um, our people have adopted others here within the northern hemisphere, um, limited to Canada, that is dealing with the some of the Eskimo or the Aleut, or some of the non Northern American indigenous peoples. We've never had a problem with adopting other peoples, as long as they fell in line with the cultural values and our system and the way of doing things. And um, if you were in line with that, there was a congruency there, then you were welcome. Uh, of course, you had to earn your title, your name, uh, or your position wherever it was that you were put. Regardless if you were black, if you were white, if you were Asian, as you can see, that this is something that has been very, you know, um, um, pervasive, or it has permeated throughout this hemisphere from the west to the east. I'm not saying that there was an outright explosion, but it was there, and we weren't a biased people. Um, we were biased for those who came here with evil intentions, and which that brings me, to the Europeans, because most of them, not all of them, not all of them, most of them came here with evil intentions to do us harm. And as we can see, well, today's based on yesterday and tomorrow's based on today, so we can ultimately see that what has transpired, as our people are still suffering from what has happened yesterday by the acts of uh, those Europeans or white people who came here from other countries, to steal, to murder, to rape, pillage, for their own gain and glory. But I don't want to go again. I don't want to digress too much, go off track. I just wanted to get back into this Red Indian thing because it's something that's really it boils my blood. When I've done so much research. Again, I showed you one picture in the part one um, series of the Red Indian myth that huh, that they show indigenous peoples, as red, in cartoons and the movies with painting, and other things. They might even put some paint on some white people, and how they actually did this during the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, exploitation of Indians in movies, as they did to black people as well. So um, I want to show you some more pictures just to give you an idea of what it is that I'm trying to get. And I'm hoping that people are basically following what it is that I'm trying to extend here. Um, so here we have okay, here we have another picture of another Indian brother. Here we go. Now just take a good look. There are some people on here who know this already. Look how dark that's a black Indian. Now, we don't call him a black Indian because we weren't color conscientious people. You see, let me bring that a little closer if I can. Right? Got a good view there. Okay, good. Now, we were not a color conscientious people. It's not something that was in our makeup. And I want to touch on that because I don't know if you've ever heard of Lauren Katz. Yeah, Lauren Katz. There, hold on a second. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, Lauren Katz. Uh, sorry. Lauren Katz had a an illustration here in his book called For Black Indians. I'm sure some of you have seen this. Some of you have even read it. If you haven't, go read it. It does have some merit, you know, and some of it needs to be further investigated or studied. I myself have personally spoke with Mr. Katz on a radio program and told him that the original Indians were black not as a result of the African influence. You know, some people actually believe that, and I'm going to dispel that myth and prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt here today. So here we have an illustration of, okay, I'm gonna read it first. Mr. York meets the Mandan Indians of the Northwest as seen in this painting by the noted artist Charles Russell. The Mandans are rubbing York's skin to see if his color will come off, an incident reported in Lewis and Clark's notes of the historic expedition to the Pacific and back. Now I have issue with this this illustration here, because in the Pacific Northwest, you had Indians who were chocolate in complexion. I ain't talking about vanilla chocolate. I ain't talking about caramel chocolate. I'm not talking about yoo-hoo chocolate. You know, I'm talking about dark skin chocolate, blackberry chocolate. And for this particular tribe, the Mandans, they were dark skinned people themselves. So where is this information coming from? Now, maybe some of the Mandans today, because the problem lies in the genetic mixing of our people with Europeans in particular, that I know of, maybe even some light-skinned blacks who, as a result of mixing with with slaves and others who've come here, who have mixed with us, lightened our skin, and then have perpetuated a myth over time because of the color issue of racism. Because what white people did during the slavery from the 1500s on down, with this whole notion that if you were dark skinned, you were negative, you were bad, you were evil, and this association with being darker skin had its negative attributes, if you will, as a result of European perpetuation during the enslavement of the darker peoples. Because remember, I tell people this, and I overemphasize, re-emphasize that the Africans were not the original people enslaved on this continent. It was the indigenous peoples who were enslaved. Remember, some of us speak English, some of us speak Spanish. You have the Mexicans, you have the Eskimos, you have down south, way down South America, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Bolivia, the Olmecs, the Mayans, the Aztecs, they're still there. Some of them still retain their languages, but there are those who live in the cities who speak Spanish. Hello. So what I'm trying to do is basically bring people up to speed as to where I'm going, and make sure you don't fall off the track on the information that I'm feeding you, because when you look at it critically, when you scrutinize it, you'll see it for what it is. It has been a mass perpetuation of deception that has thrived through the ages, and it's about time that we get from underneath that and start hearing the truth, or start researching it and investigating it for ourselves, so we may begin to take off the veil of secrecy as to why this was kept from us for so long. And the reasons why is because they want to divide and conquer. That's the whole program. Because when Africans and Indians were introduced, there was a common bond. The fact that the European was here, they were stealing lands, they were enslaving people, and they were miseducating us basically from the very beginning, from slavery. Slavery. People talk about the boarding schools. No, no, no. The miseducation started from slavery. You know. So Indians, black people, only difference is hair texture. With the Africans and the Indians, I'm talking about pre-colonial North America, South America, etc. But I'm staying in North America. The complexion of most Indians were of a darker hue. And then depending on where you live, southeastern Indians, the the West Coast Indians, all the way up into you talking about in Matoy Yalakit, or the white man calls him Chief Joseph from the Nez Perce, to the Walla Walla Valley, to California, you know, to the Yuchi, the Yaqui, you know, these people were of a darker hue. They lived in the sun. How can these people be red? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Just bear with me. So, you know, it's astonishing when you see things like this, that it says that, and I'm going to continue reading where I left off. It says, York meets the Mandan Indians of the Northwest, as seen in this painting by the noted artist Charles Russell. I'm going to read it again. The Mandans are rubbing York's skin to see if his color will come off. Huh. An incident reported in Lewis and Clark's notes of the historic expedition in the Pacific and back. Now, I don't know about you, but when the white man came here, we always used to say, you speak with forked tongue. From as far as I can remember, they have been lying, and I'm not talking about all white people. Let me be clear about this. I'm talking about those who came here with intent to deceive and destroy and pillage and rape and do everything under the sun that was evil. So I want people to be clear, I'm not a racist. What I am doing is I'm exposing a lie that has been taught and been perpetuated for far too long and needs to be undone. So they said Lewis and Clark in their notes said that they were rubbing his skin to see if it would come off, which I find interesting, to say the least, because, again, I say that the Indians in the south, parts of the northeast, and in on the west coast were of a darker hue themselves, and so much so that there were alliances formed between so-called Africans and indigenous peoples here. So much so that it upset the powers that were growing at that time, and they had to do something about it. And the first casualty for us was truth. For them, it was their leverage. They had to compromise the truth in order for them to conquer. And that compromise was us. They had to divide us. And they did everything under the sun to do just that. And here we are today. Light skin, brown skin, dark skin, indigenous peoples, black people who have so much in terms of indigenous blood and imagery. Now, another thing I wanted to touch on, the features of indigenous peoples vary, even hair textures. Now, Christopher Columbus thought he was in India, fine. Now, we look at India people today. In India, East India, not North America, clear. If you go there, if you've seen some of the country folks in India, some of them are dark, some of them are very dark. Chocolate complexion, straight hair. Some of them have curly hair. Some of them have coarse hair. I really want to expound on this further. It's a long story with regards to our people here in North America. Some people, again, ain't going to like this. That I will emphatically say that the indigenous peoples here in North America did, in fact, come from India. Because you can see the phenotypes that existed in the latter part of the latter part of the 17th century, the features of those, especially when it comes to the eastern woodland tribes, and also some of the west coast tribes, you see the features, the hair textures of these people reflected